Hey, what's going on YouTube? Cody Sperber, the Clever Investor, back again. And today's training video is going to be a little bit different than the normal training videos we have on this channel because I'm going to share with you a clip from our latest Clever Labs. This is a deal-making event that I hold twice per year in my office at my event center for my students to show them how to get more deals and scale their investing businesses. And this year we had the great Pace Morby, one of the best in the world at creative finance. He is star of A&E's Triple Digit Flip. He runs the largest creative finance group on Facebook, and he's just a badass real estate investor. And we had him come out, and the training he gave was to teach our students how to pitch subject to transactions to motivated sellers. So if you're looking to acquire more rental properties by bypassing the banks, using the subject to strategy, the way he pitches it to motivated sellers is going to help you get a lot more deals. So listen up, take great notes, and make sure you drop me a comment down below if you got something from this video. I'm going to turn it over to Pace so he can train you in this week's training video.
Okay, so if I am going to an appointment, what's the first thing I'm pitching? Am I pitching sub-2 seller finance? What's the first thing I pitch? Always cash. Why do we pitch cash first? What'd you say? Get it out of the way? Yeah, that's a great answer, Chris. What's that? Here's what it does. For the seller, it's what they expect, right? So when you go take a girl out on a date, you show up with flowers, right? You don't show up with, a car and go, welcome to our first date. Here, I bought you a car. No, you save that till like year 3 of marriage. You know what I'm saying? Like you give them what they expect, right? You start with what they expect because you got to build rapport. The second reason why you do it with cash is because that also gives you all the other investors' cash numbers. Okay, I'll give you a great example of this. One of the deals I bring up all the time is a deal with Dale and Susan Poyer. I brought up a deal. It's a deal on 1906 South 78th Place in Mesa, Arizona. 1906 South 78th Place in Mesa, Arizona. Okay, so this particular deal, I get a wholesaler that brings it to me. Wholesaler says, hey, this lady's out of her freaking mind. She wants way too much freaking money. And I know this is what you specialize in because I made a name for myself. I talk about what I do, right? And I brag that I can solve people's problems that other people can't solve. So I go to the appointment with the wholesaler. Wholesaler says, dude, you're never going to get this deal. She wants $110,000. What did I buy it for? What does it say on Zillow? I bought it for $110,000. Okay? If I'm a wholesaler, what do I have to offer on that deal? ARV is $110,000. What do I have to offer on cash? $60K if you got balls, especially right now, right? Probably 40 grand. In this current climate, 40 grand. But here's what happened. I go to the appointment, I'm talking to Susan and Dale, and I go, this is a great question, right? Why haven't you sold the house yet? What's going on? What's kept you from selling the house? They go, we keep getting lowballed. Okay, so this is another reason why I start with cash. This is another reason I start with cash. Write it down. I create a common enemy. I can't tell you how many times Bryant Apples and their team has been my common enemy with the seller. It was great. I don't remember that house that we did, but I did a deal with, do you remember the house? No, not that house. It was a deal in Tempe. I ended up being the contractor on it too. It was on a corner, single-story home. Fairmont. And I was working against his team that's less experienced than me, which is kind of a cheat code. Like I'm working against brand new acquisition people that are being trained. And I'm like, ooh, this is great. So I create a common enemy with the seller and myself against whoever my competition is. That's why I start with cash. Okay, the seller starts giving me, have you guys ever called on FSBOs for sell by owners? Okay, and this is a great question. If you ever call FSBOs, write this down, this is a great question. You ask them, was there something you were looking for on the market that you couldn't get with an agent? Do you know what that question actually is asking them? Hey, let's talk shit about your real estate agent. And they sit there and you create a common enemy. The enemy of my friend is also my enemy, right? So what happens is we create a common enemy in a cash conversation. I'm like, yeah, that sounds really low. That sounds really low. So this is what I said to Susan. This is a line I use all the time. I go, yeah, it sounds like you're probably getting offers somewhere around like $50,000, right? And she goes, yeah, kind of about that. And I go, yeah, it makes sense. Like, that's probably what I would offer if I was going to offer cash. Write that down. It is subtle gangster lines like that will get the door open for you. And so Susan perks up and she says, well, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean that's what you would offer if you were offering cash? I go, oh, well, it's obvious that like I would pay cash for that too. If I was going to buy cash, I would pay $40,000, $50,000, but obviously you don't want to sell for that and you're not going to budge, right? And she goes, yeah. And I go, so what I'm asking you, Susan, is if I come up to your purchase price, would you give me terms? If I come up to your purchase price. So she goes, I don't understand what you're saying. I said, hypothetically, let's say I came all the way up to your $110,000. These things and the way I say them actually mean a lot. Okay? Let's say I come all the way up to your $110,000 number. Would you be willing to give me terms? Do you think sellers know what the hell terms means? Okay, so how do we explain terms to sellers? Always through a story. Never say subject to, seller finance, novation agreement. If you ever say those words to a seller, you've failed the appointment. 100% you failed the appointment, okay? So I told her, who doesn't know my F-150 story? Oh, it's great. There are always two people. It's perfect. Okay? And I'll get into some really good stuff. I just got to get some of the 3 or 4 basic stories out of the way so everybody understands. So this is what I tell to Susan. I go, so Susan, here's what terms are. So I used to have an F-150. Has anybody ever used this F-150 story, but like in their own words? Is it super helpful to get stuff done? Like your sellers are like, holy crap, this is amazing, right? So this is how I explain creative finance to a seller, is actually through a car, okay? And I'm going to get into some really high-level creative finance stuff, and I'm going to use cars as analogies in a couple of minutes as well, okay? So stay with me. So I go, Susan, I used to have this truck as an F-150. It was 320,000 miles, and I didn't say it was a Toyota. It's a Ford. So when it hits 320,000 miles, starts having problems. So I decide, kind of like you decided, that you're ready to sell this thing. So you went online, you found your price. Where did you find your price, Susan? She says, Zillow. I go, okay, but in the car world, where do we find the price? Kelley Blue Book, which is actually the Zillow of vehicles, right? She's like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I go, so I'm just like you, Susan. I'm belligerent on my purchase price. I realize that this is my thing and that I should sell it for what I want. She's like, yeah, right? Remember, I've already created a common enemy in my cash conversations regarding the wholesalers. I now am offering a higher number to her, and I'm telling her why I'm doing it through a story that she can relate to, okay? So then she says, and I use this story, I don't even know how many times, no less than 500 times I've told this story to sellers, okay? And never once have I ever had a seller go, I don't understand. Every time they go, oh my gosh, I understand what seller finance is. So I go, all right, Susan, so I go on Kelley Blue Book. I find out that my truck is worth $5,000. And instead of me listing my property or my vehicle, you see how I tripped up there on purpose? I accidentally said property. I'm trying to draw the parallel between her property and my car. I go, so instead of me listing the property at $5,000, my car, I'm sorry, Susan, my truck at $5,000, I listed my truck on Craigslist for $10,000. And 3 months later, just like you, 3 months later, have you gotten your 110,000 number? She goes, no. I go, you're getting offers at 50,000, half of what it's worth, or what you believe it's worth. I go, here's the thing, Susan. I was heartbroken. I didn't even have an offer. 3 months goes by, nobody called me, texted me, nobody yelled at me, nothing. And so my wife comes in. Literally, I'm sitting at my desk. I'm catching up with emails. My wife taps me on the shoulder, and she says, hey, sweetheart, can you sell that truck, please? Like, literally every day I have to go around that truck to get into the driveway. And I go, what do you want me to do? Like, if I go list this on Craigslist for $5,000, I'm going to have somebody lowball me. And I go, Susan, if I listed this truck right now for $5,000, do you think I would have sold it for $5,000? Anybody know the answer to that? Do you think you get what you sell on Craigslist? Like, you put anything on Craigslist for $1,000, what are you getting? $5, Tristan says. $800, $700, because I'll be there in 15 minutes with cash. Like, what else am I going to freaking have you pay me with, right? Like, that's some sort of benefit. So you get Susan laughing, and she understands that. And then I go, so here's what I did. My wife says, sweetheart, you're the creative finance guy. Why don't you take payments on the truck? I go, oh my gosh, that's so freaking genius. So I literally go back to my Craigslist post, and what's the one thing I changed, everybody? Will take payments. I said F-150, $10,000, will take payments. And Susan goes, oh my gosh. I go, exactly. So did I sell the truck for $10,000? I sold it for $12,500 with $1,000 down. And Susan's like, what? Are you kidding me? I go, here's the thing, Susan. You think the value of something is the purchase price. But I know different. I know the value of something is always what? You guys need to write this down. Put this on your board. The value of something is never the purchase price. The value is always what you can blank. Nope. That's still purchase. There you go. There you go. Some of you guys have been paying attention. The value of something is never the purchase price. The value of something is what I can do with it. And if you write that down and you pay attention to it, it will also help you uncrack the ability to comp and underwrite multifamily, single-family creative finance deals, is because you look at what the property can do for you rather than what you're paying for it. Okay? So she's like, I don't understand. Like, why would this guy do this? I go, his name is Jose. Jose is a painter. Gave me $1,000 down. Didn't check my credit. Or I'm sorry, didn't check his credit. You see what I did there? Okay. Didn't check my credit. Didn't check Jose's credit. And I ended up letting Jose make $350 payments to me over the course of several years. He dropped the truck off at my house every single month, and I ended up collecting a little under $16,000 for that truck. And she's like, why would he do that? And I said, Susan, because he didn't overpay for the truck. He paid exactly what he needed to go and produce $6,000 or $7,000 every single month by using that truck. So for $1,000 down, no credit check, didn't look at his bank account, wasn't even a legal resident of the United States. I don't care. Does not matter to me. He gave me $1,000 and he's willing to pay me $350 a month. I sold my truck for 3 and a little bit over times the value of the truck. But did Jose overpay for that truck if that produced him $7,000 a month and all his payment was $350 a month? Remember, the value of something is never the purchase price. It is always what you can do with it, okay?